Okay, I think with that, we are ready to roll. So, welcome to this is an official welcome. Welcome back for the fourth out of five. Today, we've saved the best for the later sessions. We're going to continue on. Some of you were in person last week. Some people, you guys heard it. Some of you guys to the recording. And if you need that, I send every week's email. You get the emails. Let's get everyone to mute. This way we can all hear each other. Thank you to those who are putting on their screens. So we are going to delve in right to what we caught off last week. We started, which is going to be on your page 48 in your student book, about what is Jewish about the Star of David, or what is the Star of David? Oh, sorry, why? It's a why course. Why? Very good. Is the Jewish Star of David Jewish? So I just asked my daughter, Mushka, to go upstairs and get us. This comes from a necklace from Marty's Jewelry. He's a local jeweler. He has, we try to support him, and he comes by often. He was here yesterday for dinner. So this is one Jewish star. This is actually interesting. Different style Jewish star. This is actually an earring. Anyhow, thank you, Mushka, for bringing this. And now that we are all familiar with a Jewish star, I asked last week if you have a piece of paper. You should have a pen. I sent you a pen to draw a Jewish star and write down one word that comes to your mind. That was last week's beginning exercise. You can do that again if you haven't done it yet. So this is basically two triangles, one upside down from the other, that are interlaced, and that forms a six-pointed star. Many stars that, typical star, if you want to draw a star, obviously if you've ever seen a star in heaven, looks just like a circle. It's just a planet. I mean, it's a star, but it's not with 6 points or 5 points, right? But nonetheless, the world draws stars with 5 points. The Jewish star has the 6 points. Okay, so that is, we covered a bit of this, but we're going to get right to jump into it again. So page 48 in your student book, and really, to be honest, how did this become a Jewish star? We'll talk about the Star of David. That's also interesting. David was an important king. But this is a very classic Jewish symbol. Let's hear from the crowd. What is the most other classic Jewish symbol, if you would say, besides the Star of David? You could say it. You can unmute yourself on Zoom if you like to say. Or
Chamsa.
Chamsa. Good. I was looking to hear that. That is, if you've seen the upside down hand,
Yeah.
okay, that is. I think that's up there. Any others?
Mezuzah.
So, okay, you guys are doing very well. I want to ask you, not in a Jewish home of a Jewish symbol. I'm asking you, if a synagogue wants to make a logo, okay, so or something like that, what is a classic Jewish symbol?
Torah scroll.
Torah scroll, very good. Any others?
Menorah.
In fact, of Chabad, the menorah, and you'll see soon, after studying this, you can see there's something really to that. The menorah is going. I'm giving away too much, but let's just say that a Jewish star is probably the most classic Jewish symbol. How long ago does that go back? Hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. There have been these stars, what we call the Jewish star, the Star of David, in synagogues. To be honest, its development, its origins are really shrouded in mystery. We're not really clear to when did it start, who made it, but we will do the best of our ability in the next few texts to go through some important rabbinic works trying to explain the Jewish star. Hopefully this will give you meaning to your Jewish stars you have. You can take that. Yes, thank you, Mushka. Okay, text one is actually quite interesting. This is penned by someone who lived till the 1980s. He grew up in Russia. He eventually fled to the United States and settled in the Lower East Side. Probably the greatest halachic, which means legal expert in Jewish law, certainly in America, our time, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. His rulings are kind of accepted by all Jews. And text one is where he is responding to someone in a letter discussing the Jewish star. And we're going to ask someone, has anybody here never read before? Owen, have you? Oh, right, you don't have your book yet. Okay. Has anybody here never had a chance to read that would like to read? Well, here is your chance, or we're going to give it away. let's start with Marilyn. Unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself and take it away. Because Marilyn is actually going to Israel soon, and she has lots of Jewish stars. She buys stuff in Israel, and maybe this is good for you to read. Go for it.
It is well known that the Star of David has been used on ark curtains and Torah covers for centuries without any controversy. Although we do not know the origins of the Star of David, this alone does not constitute an objection to its use. In fact, one can find important symbolism in the Star of David in that it serves to remind us that God reigns over what is above and below and over all four directions.
Stop right there. This is interesting. How many directions are there? Trick question. North, south, east, west. That's what most people say. 4 directions. But in truth, look at a dice. There's six directions. There's north, east, south, west. You believe this can be altered, but the bottom is up and down as well. So there are 6 ultimate directions. Even though most people think there's 4, there's really 6. Right? There's 6. Everyone knows a die has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. So here he says an interesting insight to the 6-pointed star is telling us about God's rule is that it is in all 4 directions. You have the 4 directions of the star, and then you have up and down as well. Okay, continue on.
Perhaps the connection with David is that when he went to war, he placed his trust in God's all-encompassing reign, and therefore, in accordance with the Torah's instruction to not be afraid while in battle, he was not intimidated by human armies and kings.
Okay, so David is one of the most important Jewish kings. He was the beginning. You're gonna ask mommy, okay, Mush? So the King David was the one who really brought peace to the Jewish people. They had enemies, they were constantly attacking them, and King David brought peace to the Jewish people in this time, and he really was loved by the people. King David was the one who really got ready the groundwork for his son Solomon, King Solomon, the wisest of men, to build the temple. But King David did really all the legwork before that. He was very great of showing the Jewish people that their connection to God is what brings them protection. And this is one reason, maybe, perhaps, number one, why the star has 6 angles, 6 points, 6-pointed star, because it refers to the 6 directions, not only north, east, south, and west, but up and down, as well as it's called associated with David, because David was one who really recognized that. He really recognized God's power and protection in all areas, and that's how he was successful in protecting the people. Now, that is Rabbi Feinstein himself is saying this is not necessarily the ultimate truth, but he just suggested. Our next text is also going to be very interesting. All right, we're getting a little commercial break. I'm sorry for now you get time to at least rest for a moment. Our next text, text 2, is going to talk about something very interesting, which was penned by a rabbi who lived in Romania. And to be honest, he was killed in Auschwitz. He was murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust. So you see, he passed in 1944 in Auschwitz. This next text is going to teach us something very interesting, not just about the 6 points of the star, but the fact that it's 2 triangles, okay? Very interesting. Who would like to read text 2? I'm just going to select people. Linda, you take Linda Grimm. Take text 2, you have to unmute. If you want to read, just say me, and you'll have the opportunity. Page 49.
Okay, there we go. I couldn't get it to unmute. Sorry about that. Okay, the Talmud recounts in Shabbat 88a how a certain Galilean lecturer, blessed is God, who gave the three-dimension Torah to the three-dimension people. The three-dimension Torah refers to the Bible, which consists of the Pentateuch, the prophets and the writings, or the Torah comprises of the written Torah, the oral Torah, and the Kabbalah. Three-dimension people refer to the fact that the Jews consist of the priests, the Levites, and the Israelites. The Star of David, which consists of two interlaced triangles, each with 3 points, alludes to these tripartite entities. There were kings of Israel who fought valiantly on behalf of the Jewish people, but only for the people and not for the Torah. In fact, many of them were wayward and neglected the Torah, but the Jews without Torah are like a body without a soul. Without the Torah, we cannot be a people. The bond between the Jewish people and the Torah ought never be severed. This bond will establish a vigorous Jewish continuity. Indeed, David, the pious and righteous king, fought his wars to protect both the Jewish people and the Torah. He thus linked the Torah to three with the people of three. This is the message conveyed by the Star of David.
So quite interesting. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
So here we have the two triangles. Triangle one, every triangle has 3 points. Triangle one represents the Torah. The Torah is given to the Jewish people, but it is of 3. So most basic understanding is the Torah, which is in English translated as the Pentateuch, which, by the way, you know what the Pentateuch actually means? What does the word pentagon mean? 5. So Torah, which is 5 books of Moses, is called the Pentateuch for that reason. But ultimately, the Jewish written law is a threesome. It is the 5 books of Moses, that's the Torah part. Then there is the book of Nevi'im, the prophets, and then Ksuvim, writings like the story of Esther. It's not a prophecy, it's a story. It was written after Moses passed. That's the 3rd section of Torah. So the Torah is made out of 3. That's triangle number 1. What's triangle number 2? The Jewish people. The Jewish people are a nation made out of 3 components: Kohanim, Leviim, and Israelites. I don't know if anybody here is a Kohen or a Levi, but I am only an Israelite. The bottom line is, it's a nation of 3. So you have these 2 triangles, and the key is that they need to be totally always connected. They can never separate. You can't have a Torah if you don't have the Jewish people. You can't have a Jewish people if they're not connected to the Torah. This is the message of the triangle on top, the triangle below. This is the reason why it's a Jewish star and called the Star of David, because we just said this is something that King David really, really held strong to and conveyed to the people of the non-severing but bond between the Torah and the people. Torah is God's wisdom, God's commandments. Then you have the Jewish people, and they constantly have to be together. You can't have one without the other. That is a secret, but this is my favorite part, what we're going to learn today about the Jewish star, to be honest. Now, just a quick catch up on our slideshows. You can now look at the screen. What is the star? Why is the Star of David a Jewish symbol? So far, what we said was, right? Blessed is God who gave 3-dimension Torah to a 3-dimension people. That's from the Talmud. So you have the Torah, triangle 1. Top is Pentateuch, which means the 5 books of Moses. The bottom says prophets, and then writings. And then you have the Jewish people. Let's redo that. Priests, Levites, and Israelites. You can write this down if you want to remember. So now, you next time you look at a Jewish star, you can actually realize how its meaning is. Isn't that cool? So something you take it for granted till now. Now you have a deeper understanding of it. Our next text, to be honest, I'm going to try to do very quickly, but on the screen. I'm not going to read it all inside. Maybe a quick introduction to it. Okay. But we're going to now study another text of a rabbi also of the 18th century, Rabbi Avram Chaim HaKohen Katz. So here's the deal. This is going to be a quick crash course in Kabbalah. If you've learned Kabbalah before, you may be familiar with this, but if not, you're nothing to be afraid of. I'm going to take you through this with ease. So this is a little bit of a crash course. So if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask. You don't have to wait to the end today. We'd like to take questions. that are related to the material earlier on. Okay. Everyone ready? Okay, so far, has anybody got a different perspective than what they wrote down the first time to the Jewish star? Isn't it different, interesting? So this next one is going to be the crash course of Kabbalah. We're going to learn why that's 6-pointed, and we're going to learn why it's got to do with David. God creates the world in how many days? How many days? 6 days. That is the correct answer because God rested on the seventh. This is going to be key to what I'm about to say. But really, God created the world in 7 days. On the seventh day, the mode of creating was, instead of active creative, it was creating the idea of rest. Which is, you realize that the first 6 days are very clear what it is. The 7 days are more of a complicated creation because it's creating, non-creating. Okay. So if you lost me, that's fine because you don't have to remember that. The point is, God created the world in 6 days, but he rested on the seventh. So there's 6 and 7. Kabbalah teaches us that actually God created the world in Hebrew, it's called Sefirot. Sefirot, you can write this word down, Sefirot. Sefirot means lights. It can mean modes of expression. Like in Hebrew, lisaper means to convey, to tell a story. Sefirot means God's lights, which he created the world with. What were God's tools? I'm going to use them. I like the word tools. What were the tools? So these tools are not hammers or nails. They are values that God wanted to give the world. And you're going to see them in figure number 2.1 on page 51. So we're going to go through quickly. Now, each of these, this whole thing can be it's totally separate course, which there are, or we're not getting into now. But let's just go through number 1. The 6 Sefirot, the 6 tools God created the world with. Number 1, chesed, kindness. Number 2, gevura, strength or discipline. Tiferet is beauty. 4, netzach, victory. 5, hod, splendor. And 6, yesod, foundation. Now, you may say to yourself, what are the difference between a lot of what's beauty and splendor got to do with this? Okay, good question for another time. The bottom line is, now you're getting a crash course in the most deepest secrets of Kabbalah. This is the 6 tools God created the world with. Now, I'm just going to show you something really cool. What happened on day 1 of creation? Help me out here. Anybody remember? I told you it happened on Tuesday. Sunday. God created light. You see, that's kindness, giving, light, kindness. Day 2, what did God do? He separated the higher waters and lower waters. Separation. That's number 2, gevura. And then I said on Tuesday, 3rd day of creation, he created vegetation and flowers. That's the beauty. You can actually see this in creation each day, although ultimately all creation was created through the 6 spheros, but each day focused on one of the 6. Again, day 1 is light, creating God, and he created light. Day 2 is separating higher waters and lower waters, which is separation, strength, discipline. And then the beauty of taking the light and the water together and creating vegetation, that's 3rd day, Tiferet, which is beauty. Okay, so now that you have got this basic gist, let us now go to our next slide. So let's have to look at the thing. I'm not going to do so much of it inside. So all of them are coming in, okay? Starts clockwise on the top. Very top thing is chesed, kindness, then it goes to the right, gevura, strength, then further clockwise. Yes, you see what I'm saying? Those are the 6. But then I said there's the 7th day. 7th day is the culmination of all of them. In Hebrew, that sephira, that tool, that light is called malchus, which can mean leadership, kingship, and it receives from all the previous days. Shabbos is not divorced from the 6 days of the week. It's not like 6 days a week, you work hard, and then 7th day you party. We do party in a beautiful way, not the typical way, not the negative way, but bottom line is no, it's a culmination. to 6 days of work, you celebrate the whole week on Shabbos. Shabbos receives from the previous days of the week. I'm going to give you something a little wild to think about for a moment. Is that I just said that on a weekly level. You may know that in Judaism, we are in what year? Anybody know the Jewish year? 5 something. You can unmute yourself if you like. Someone on Zoom. What is the Jewish year?
5782.
Correct. 5,782. So we are almost completed. You're going to be wild. Each 1,000 years is like a day. First 1,000 years was Sunday. Mashiach hopefully will come sooner. We need a lot of peace in the world. We need a lot of blessings. Come sooner, but the deadline is after full 6 days, each day representing another 1,000 years, 6,000. That Friday night, that's Shabbos. It's the time of Mashiach. Quite interesting to think about it that way, but bottom line is that so what will happen when Mashiach comes? It won't just be an era of utopia, which it will be. It will be a culmination of all the great good deeds that people have been doing for 6,000 years. Automatically, that will be the time of God's revelation, peace, the time of Mashiach, but built on the first 6 days. The point I'm trying to convey to you, both in a 6-day, 7-day scenario, or in millennia of the world, is the concept that 6 is the working and the 7th is just taking that all in. Shabbos is the day we take in everything of the week. We don't need to do it. It's already been done. We're just taking it in. Now that you know that, King David, which is the kingship, represents that 7th, the recipient of all the previous 6. And if you want to know something pretty wild, talk about 6 to 7. How many were there generations from Abraham, the first Jew, till Moses? Anybody know? So I'll do a quick jump with Jewish history with you.
10.
10. That would be good. It would be close. It's a close number. Any other guesses? Okay, well, we can play hot and cold. It'll take us a little bit of time. So let me give you a little history lesson. Abraham had a son named, you can help me out with the beginning, Isaac. Isaac had a son named Jacob. So Abraham, it's like Yaakov, 3 generations. Yaakov had a son, he had 12 tribes. One of his sons' name was Levi, tribe of Levi. That's where Moses comes from. Levi, this is the hard ones. Levi had a son named Kahas. Had a son named Amram, which was the father of Moses. As you see in my hands, Moses was the 7th generation. 7th is always a very big deal because 6 generations of working, and then the 7th, literally, Abraham was trying to introduce godliness to the world, and he kept on doing it through his children. But when did God actually appear to mankind, give a mandate at Mount Sinai? Moses. Count next 7 generations. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. From Moses till David are 7 generations. What happens after that? The temple is built. So with that little Kabbalistic, now you know why it is a 6-pointed star, but it also got a centerpiece which receives from all. See, the center is equal. In other words, some of them are further from each other on this. If you're looking at the star, if you're looking at the Jewish star, there's, from strength to splendor, you got to go through a whole long way. It's closer to kindness, right? But this receives from each one equally. And this is a little bit about the concepts of, so I told you pretty much all you need to know. Page 51, text 3 is your homework if you'd like. Now, I mentioned before that Jewish stars have been around for years. They're Jewish symbols, and we've given some explanations for that. But we're going to take a bit of a shift, a bit of a turn. If you would go now, I went to Israel. Actually, yesterday we just gave just in this room, we had dinner, Israeli food, falafel, and we had a great time, and we talked about a trip to Israel. If you go around Israel, there's lots, perhaps per capita, more than any other place in the world, of archaeological digs. Incredible findings. You guys know why? Why? Because civilization has been there forever. Okay, true, in America, you could find some things maybe from before the Indians, I don't know, Iceman or cavemen, but that's like far in between. To find mankind living in their vessels and their coins and all that stuff, you're not going to find that if you dig in your backyard for years. The whole New York State would be turned over by a magical tractor. You wouldn't find that type of stuff thousands of years ago. But believe it or not, in Israel, literally, you could dig in your backyard and you'll find stuff. So, and what's most important is that, to our discussion, is that if you will dig, they're doing a lot of archaeological digs and finding things of the times thousands of years ago. Are they finding Jewish stars on coins, on vessels? They're not. They're not finding Jewish stars. So, we know exactly who made the Jewish star. We know the semblance of it. We just explained that. It's beautiful. But we're going to take a little bit of a shift to an old Jewish symbol, which I said was the menorah. They find on all these coins, even today, a shekel. I just put a few shekels. Let me just find one for a second. Okay, my daughter must have given it into the charity box. I actually had put it in this thing, a bunch of coins, because from our trip, we had some shekels. And Israel, even the kind of the state symbol, is a menorah. Menorahs go back, way back. Now, obviously, menorahs are a Jewish symbol because it was used in the temple. So, Stars of David, not necessarily in the temple. I don't think we have any record of that. We don't know that. But menorahs go back, way back. And that's why for our Chabad, we actually choose, if you look at the symbol right in the back there, or on the top of that little thing, you got, see, it's a menorah. Because menorah is actually really a Jewish symbol forever. Whenever, if you do archaeological digs in Israel, they'll find lots of jugs, lots of coins. Now they'll find other things on it. They may find olive branches or other things. There's different symbolism, but menorah is an age-old thing. So listen to this. We're going to now read text 4. We're going to read it inside. This is written by an important rabbi who lived in Krakow, Poland. The Code of Jewish Law is a translation in English of the word Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch means code of law. It was written only 500, 600 years ago in Israel. After the Talmud was deciphered, the code of law came, Code of Jewish Law, written by a rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Karo. Now, here's the point. He was a Sephardic rabbi. The translation of his book, Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, really means a set table. Why would he call his book a set table? Because he wanted to say, this is set to go. You don't have to start getting things ready and asking me questions. You just enjoy. Here is Judaism on a silver platter. Literally, that's what he said. So that was the Sephardic rabbi's work. There were certain ideas that Ashkenazim had done differently, Jews from Ashkenaz, from Germanic Jews, that the rabbi, which we're about to read, Rabbi Moshe Isserles in Krakow, he wrote a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So he called his commentary the Mappa. Mappa means the tablecloth. We have one rabbi writing the set table, and one rabbi said, I've got a few comments on it, and it's called the tablecloth. Okay? For those who are interested in this, good. If not, don't worry, we're going to rock and roll. So Rabbi Moshe Isserles, the tablecloth guy, the Ashkenazic rabbi in Krakow, Poland, made edits on the Code of Jewish Law, very important rabbi. He gets now to talk about what was on David's shield. So let us join. We'll ask Daniel, who's here in person, to read text 4 for everybody.
We hold a tradition that a menorah adorned David's shield because the merit of David's study of Torah and his adherence to our beliefs and foundations of faith protected him in battle. The menorah was a shield and armor.
So although some people thought it's called the Star of David because we've explained different things, some people felt it was actually on his shield was like he was a king and he led victorious wars to protect the people. So on his shield, there was a Star of David also. So it became not only a Jewish star, but called the Star of David. Rabbi Moshe Isserles says that actually the menorah is the ultimate Jewish symbol, and he says that was on David's shield. There's more to the story of the significance of the menorah, which I'm going to show you directly on the screen. So the menorah, you may have seen different pictures of different menorahs. We're not going to get into how menorahs look, but I will tell you the temple's menorah on the very bottom had like a tripod, 3 legs. You know, like a circle table can have 3 legs. Can a square table have 3 legs? Not common. Won't really work unless you put one of the legs in the middle, not by one of the corners, or you'll have a very shaky table. So, but imagine a circle table could have 3 legs, like a tripod idea. The menorah's base was like somewhat circular and had 3 legs on the bottom. And Rabbi Moshe Isserles is talking about the menorah, how it's an important Jewish symbol, and he says the 3 legs of the menorah represent 3 fundamental parts of Jewish belief. And here they are. So, catch me as we go along. 3 fundamental principles of faith. Number 1, existence of God, that we believe there is a God. Number 2, communication. What do you think communication means? That we believe that God communicated to mankind. Not only that there is a God, but the second most important principle of faith is that we believe that God communicates to mankind. That's the second leg of the menorah. A menorah has to stand, you need all 3. Can't have 1, you can't have 2, you need 3. The ultimate is, it's not only God communicate what he wants from us, but God gives us free choice. Now, each of these subjects are important. I just wanted to touch just in short on 3 legs of the menorah of the base were these 3 principles of our faith. So at this point, if you wrote down anything, that's great. I just wanted you to look back at what you wrote down when you originally saw Jewish Star and see if we've gained any insight. And I think just preparing this myself, I've gained insight, and I will never look at a Jewish Star the same way again. Okay, our next question. So we are now going to go to page 53. Why does, it's a course of why does a mikvah purify? So before we get into this question, has anybody heard of the word mikvah? Okay, some people have. So there could be a lot of associations with a mikvah. You may know more or some less. I'm going to tell in those simplest terms. I actually really wanted my wife to give some of these next questions because she is much more versed, and in terms of this discussion, I think she'd be better to communicate. But I will do my best. I think one of the elements I'm going to leave to her for when she's available, either if she's available later today or next week. But in short, mikvah is the ritual bath for ritual purity and impurity. So I want to make this very clear. We said before, there's a lot of archaeological digs going on in Israel. They're always finding mikvahs, always finding structures in the ground that would be there near a stream, near a spring, or being a cistern of where water would collect and people would be able to bathe themselves. This is not a public bathhouse. It is spiritual purification exclusively. What do I mean by that? It's not that if you got dirty, you went to a mikvah. A mikvah has to do with a spiritual, it's not to do with anything we can imagine, dirty and clean. So you can have a super clean person and he can be ritually, spiritually impure. Why? For many reasons. Either he came in contact with a dead body. To go to the temple, he would have to purify himself. What's the big deal? He went to his grandfather's funeral. It's not that he did anything wrong. But in terms of spiritual sensitivity, anything that lacks life, lacks God's extra presence, and would need purification. So that's one example. Some people may have not touched anything, but the Kohen Gadol, the high priest in the temple, before he would enter certain parts of the temple for Yom Kippur, which is coming up, he would purify himself extra and go underwater. It's a complete submersion in water. with no clothing, no bathing suits, the way your birthday suit, that exact suit. So those are some examples. So it's a spiritual purity and impurity. Another example, if someone was converting to Judaism, one of the steps is they go into a mikvah. So obviously, I'm just telling you the basic idea. There are very, very many requirements. You can't just fill up a pool of water and say, oh, we've got a guy in the pool, it's good. It has to be rainwater, and rainwater that hasn't been filtered. It's got a lot of rules to it. It's got to be godly water, not just this little. They nowadays made beautiful mikvahs, which is important that people can enjoy going to them. But a mikvah can be a filtered water, but has attachment to the rainwater. There's a pipe that connects them. I'm not giving you the whole construction, the engineering of a mikvah. It's a fascinating subject. And it's actually the key. I just give you examples that have to do with any person. And in temple times, there were more examples of purity and impurity. But the key element of a mikvah in today's world is in terms of marriage. And that is something my wife will discuss about the way that Jewish marriage works. And a mikvah is so important. Listen to this. This is gonna blow your minds. And this concept, hold on to it, because this is going to be relevant to some other things we may talk about this week or next week. And this is how it goes. If a community is starting out, they're building a Jewish community. They have a certain amount of limited funds. What should come first? What do you think is the first thing they should make? Okay, yeah, thank you. So we have one smart cookie, and everyone's smart here. But the bottom line is that I would have never thought, unless I led you on like I did, the first thing you build is a synagogue. That, what most people would think is the most important Jewish structure in a community. But actually, before a synagogue, before a Torah scroll, if you're limited funds, and it's a question one or the other, you first have to establish a kosher mikvah. There are kosher mikvahs locally, but just to stick to the topic, this is not a public bathhouse. This is not if you're dirty. You can have something that's perfectly clean, spiritually impure. You can have something that's filthy, head to toe in mud, and he's pure spiritually. So this is a very interesting discussion, but we're going to keep this quite simple. And this is, let's read text 5. Okay, I'm going to try to keep the ball rolling. So I'm going to do a little reading, but if anybody wants to read, you can have a chance. So I'll read the first one. So I just said what Maimonides says in text 5. This is not a logical dirt. This is spiritual dirt. Immersing in a mikvah, says text 5 on page 53, to emerge from a state of impurity is an ordinance whose rationale exceeds human understanding. It has nothing to do with filth that can be washed away by water. We think of water as a cleansing agent. No, this is not the purpose. Not to clean the person. Rather, it is a divine decree. So Maimonides tells, if you remember our very first class, Maimonides said there are two types of mitzvahs that we understand rationally, and then there's beyond our limited understanding, beyond mankind's limited grasp of life. This is a mitzvah, says Maimonides, that supersedes our understanding. It's nothing to do with filth or dirt. That's number one. Now, the next text is from a Kabbalist who lived many years ago in Sfat, the Reishis Chachma, and actually he's buried, I didn't know this till into Israel this time, in Hebron. He's buried in an old cemetery there, which has unfortunately been destroyed many times. But very important, actually, before one gets married, we study his works. And this is going to be, what is it then that a mikveh does? So even though we know that it's really beyond our understanding, we're still always trying to find some symbolism in it. That's what Maimonides taught us, even those mitzvahs, which we can't remember. I said mixing wool and linen, we don't do that. But once we're told that, we're supposed to find some meaning, some significance. So we're going to get someone to read this. Ken, you read text 6a on page 54.
We enter the mikveh to return our spiritually blemished bodies and souls to their origins. In the mikveh, we are enveloped like a fetus in the womb of its mother. When we emerge from the mikveh, our bodies and souls are restored. We become like new, and negative forces have no part in us. We should sense a new spirit from the spark of the soul that has been returned to us. Before entering the mikveh, it is appropriate to repent for our wrongdoings.
So first of all, thank you, Ken. In this text, we are told a few things about the mikveh experience. Number one, it's not just to walk in and out. It's to actually do some meditation, to think about our wrongdoings and try to return closer to God. So there's a thought process, but also it's almost like we come out anew. We're like going back into our mother's, like a fetus in its mother's stomach, which is surrounded by liquid. And then when it emerges, it's birth. So it's almost like a rebirth process for a person spiritually. Okay, good. Now, let's do a little more. This is another important text. 6b on page 54. Who didn't get a chance to like to read? Piper, would you like to read? Take it away. Just unmute.
Okay. We should regard ourselves after immersion as if we were created anew at that moment. For with immersion, we return to the primordial state when existence was enveloped by water, as it says, Genesis 1:2, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. We ought to contemplate that just as our bodies have undergone renewal, so too our behavior should be renewed for the better.
Beautiful. So this is a very similar idea we had before. I'm going to take you a few slides and then I'm going to show you something really interesting. Okay. Right? Enveloped in a water like a fetus in the womb. And then returning to primordial state when existence was enveloped by water. So both of these ideas are pretty similar. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you something very interesting. There are creatures of land. This is a Hasidic idea. You ready for this? Hold on tight. There are creatures of the land and creatures of the water. What is a major difference that divides the creatures of the land and the creatures of the water?
How they breathe.
Good. How they breathe. Good. That's going to be actually the answer. But anybody else can help me out with that. Tell me something else. You see, ultimately, the creatures in the water are constantly with the consciousness that they are dependent on the water, their source of life. They know, obviously, there are some animals that can be in both, but talk about creatures strictly of the water. Take a fish. It knows that it cannot survive without water. Part of its conscious is it needs to be here. It needs to be connected to its source, which is the water. The moment it leaves the water, it can't survive. It consciously knows. That's creatures of the water. Creatures of the land, you obviously ultimately come back to getting your nourishment from the land. You eat food that comes from the land, but ultimately you can go up in a plane for a while and you can be up. Now, obviously, our source of life is the oxygen around us, but it's not so clearly seen. You don't have to be connected to the earth in order to live. So, Hasidic teaching says there are two types of souls. Tzaddikim, which means holy ones like Moses, they are like fish in the water. They know without connection to God, without connection to the water, they have no life. And then regular people like us, we are challenged by living on earth, and we can be in a delusion. We can assume that we don't need to be connected to the source because we don't really feel that we're need to be there. This is what our souls experience. And the trick is that even though we are souls like creatures of the earth, which we don't inherently feel our need to be connected to our source, we still serve God. That's the big deal. So what's the importance of this? A mikvah is where you get to kind of go back to be like a fish. So the purpose, why it is a mikvah? That your total submersion in the water bring purification spiritually. Again, ultimately it's beyond their understanding. We're just giving some semblance to this. Is like text 6b was talking about, that we should be renewed for better, but we should experience a little bit of what it's like to be underwater and just fully enveloped by the source of life. Now, I want to tell you something pretty wild. Should I add something or we should keep it rocking? I'm going to skip 7a and 7b for the sake of time, because I just basically told you this is the Hasidic idea from the Alter Rebbe. This is what it was just said. So that, if you want to look at that, see that inside, that's your homework. Let me just read the last part of 7b. I'll read the whole thing. When human beings, which are dwellers of a world that senses independence from God, we feel that we can be independent. We're not dependent. We don't live in the water. We're not fish in the sea. We live on the land. When we immerse in a mikvah, which represents a subsumed state of existence, they return to the original source from which change can flow. So this is the opportunity you have to make change, because you can tap into your real self, which the essence of the soul always feels its absolute connection to its source, to its maker, to its creator. So we discussed mikvah. Now on page 3 is going to talk about, sorry, on page 3. Page 57 is a subject I would like my wife to get to when she has time. So we're going to go now to page 59, which is a great subject. So while you're turning your pages, why don't you look at the screen, see the last slides. Mikvah's rebirth and opportunity to, number 1, repent from previous wrongdoings. So it's repentance. And on the other hand, renew our behavior for the better. This cute picture of these father and son, which is the land, separate beings. And then fish in the sea, subsumed beings. Okay, so even though you're going to see the next few slides, don't have to close your eyes, but just, you'll hear from my wife, hopefully. This is about a mikvah, and oh, here we are. Okay, this is a very important question, which I get all the time. So just quick, who can help me out with this? We have a hand raised. Lynn, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just was curious, is there a special time? Obviously for women, there's a special time that they go to mikvah. Do men go to mikvah, and does the mikvah have to be in a structure? Can it be in the ocean?
Great question. So I'm going to answer that question because that's a good question. Number 1 is a mikvah can be in an ocean. However, that's a last resort for a few reasons. People may not feel the privacy of it, and the mikvah has to be done with certain preparations that can be done before going to the ocean, but to make sure there's no, I'll just give you some, you asked the question, so I'm going to say, the point is to return the way you were created back to its maker. So if someone's, let's say, has a Band-Aid on, let's get rid of it. If someone has a bandage on, they'll have to wait to go to mikvah. It's like a cast or something, you know? There can't be any separation between your skin and the water. Okay, that's no big deal, but let's say someone has makeup on or nail polish or all that stuff. So this is a very interesting subject, which my wife can talk to you more about. Bottom line is, an ocean is a kosher mikvah. The reason why mikvahs are made, by the way, today, mikvahs can be more gorgeous than spas. Beautiful places, and particularly women's mikvahs are done on the grand scale to allow people peace of mind and the time it takes to prepare properly and enjoy a mikvah experience. It's a good question about men. Men do go to mikvah. It is not today, in our times, in temple times, it was more often. Some people have a tradition to go before Shabbat or Yom Kippur. Some men, if they have the luxury of being in a Hasidic community, like I go every single day. Bottom line is that it's that's more custom, but there are certain biblical mitzvahs that need, like to enter the Holy Temple, you need to have spiritual purification. It's not a custom. It's not like before you pray, you want to feel extra spiritual. You got to do it. That's a custom. That's not, but a good question. Any other questions before we go further? Okay, question 4, page 59. Why are there so many do's and don'ts in Judaism? Who can give me a quickie here? How many commandments are there in the entirety of Torah?
612.
Very, very, very close.
32.
What did you say?
632.
Very close. Anybody else?
613, 613.
613. Now, 613 is a lot. Now, if I would give a task, I'm not going to give you this, but if you could run an optional homework, write down as many mitzvahs as you can think of. Visiting the sick, you name it. Charity, Shabbos candles, Kiddush, you can start. How many do you think you can get to? Even if you started writing from now till next week's class. It's a lot of mitzvahs. And the more you learn about them, it's interesting. There's so many do's and don'ts in Judaism. And what's interesting is 613 is a huge number if you think about it. 613, each of them is another mitzvah. And they don't just apply to, how do you daven in a shul, every area of Jewish life. You will not believe this. There are even mitzvahs related to and Jewish teachings related to how one gets dressed, when how you use the bathroom, every area, Jewish intimate life, every area of life. Is God like obsessed? Is he bored? Is he trying to make us meshuggah? Is he trying to make us crazy? All these different details, this way or that way. Come on, even the way you tie your shoes. So I'm going to give it to you because you guys deserve a little bit of craziness. So being that Kabbalistically you already learned that there's kindness and severity. In Kabbalistic terms, the right is kindness, the left is severity. We always start with the right. So we put on our shoes. You first put on the right shoe and then the left shoe. And then when it comes to tying the shoe, being that tying in Judaism is associated with tefillin, because that's what you tie in your arm. So when you're tying your shoe, we think about the tefillin, and we tie first the left shoe and then the right shoe. My point is, this stuff is endless. I mean, really, is God really that bored that small things really make a difference to him? Is he really, maybe he's like OCD, right? Like OCD, like he can never stop. There's no way to please him. So we're going to do an interesting way of doing this. We're going to read 3 texts together. And then I'm going to ask you to answer this question, or to give at least insight to this question the best you can. So L'chaim, today's class is really great, and we're going to finish this question today. So we're going to read 3 texts. Page 60, text 9a. This is from Nachmanides, the Ramban, who was also a rabbi and doctor, who would like to read his page 60. And we're going to ask someone locally. Pat, why don't you read that? And then we'll give someone else on Zoom. Again, if you're on Zoom and you like to read, make yourself known.
Mitzvah were solely given to refine human beings. Midrash Bereshit Rabbah 441. The mitzvah are not to benefit God. Their purpose is to benefit humankind, to keep them safe from harm, shield them from negative beliefs and base character traits, remind them of the miracles and wonders of the Creator, and help them know God. The Midrash says that mitzvah are intended to refine human beings, as we would refer to refining silver. The act of refining silver is not senseless. It removes all impurities. So too, the mitzvah remove from our hearts every harmful belief, inform us of the truth, and enable us to keep it continuously in our minds.
Okay, so I'm going to try not to talk too much. So this way you get to make these decisions on your own. That was our first text, 9a, 9b. Page 61 is another text which discusses this. Who would like to read? Okay, Linda Chandler, why don't you read text 9b?
This is the meaning of the blessing we recite before we fulfill a mitzvah. Blessed are you, who has sanctified us with his commandments. The Hebrew word kiddishanu, generally rendered as sanctified us, can also translate as betrothed us. Thus, the blessing implies that God betrothed us through giving us his mitzvot. Just as a man betroths a woman in order to unite with her in a perfect bond, as it is written, he shall cleave to his wife and they shall be one flesh. Similarly, and infinitely more so, is our union with the infinite light of God when we engage in Torah and mitzvot. This is why King Solomon in Song of Songs depicts our union with God by means of a metaphor of a groom and bride whose relationship is characterized by attachment, longing, desire, embraces, and kisses.
Thank you. So again, I'm going to try to really keep out any commentary. I want you guys to think about this on your own. That's our second text, and our final third text, text 9c. Maria, why don't you read text 9c? Please unmute yourself, and we'll hear from people what they think.
It is well-known rabbinic statement that the purpose of the creation of this world is that God desired that the lowliest world become a worthy home for his presence. The culminating fulfillment of this depends on our actions and service throughout the duration of our exile. For the reward of a commandment is the commandment itself, meaning by virtue of performing a mitzvah, a person suffuses infinite divine energy from above downward to be clothed in the corporality of the world.
So first of all, thank you for reading that. Now we have read the three texts. I try not to really give anything away here. Let's go back to our question. I want you guys to help me out, figure out how do we look at all these do's and don'ts of God. So I'm gonna give everyone one more, just a few more seconds to think based on the three texts. They're really similar ideas, but really each to their own of how to look at the do's and don'ts of Judaism. If anybody like to share, you're more than welcome.
I think that the mitzvahs are the playbook of how God wants us to be closer to him. It's sort of a way of God saying that this is the way that if you want to reach me, if you want to be closer to me, these are the things that I request of you to in order to be closer and understand it. The Torah is his letter. It tells us basically how to have a relationship with God.
That is amazing. Thank you, Maria. And that, which text do you refer to the most when you said that? I think it's text 9b, page 61. Okay, anybody else like to talk? You're more than welcome to. Should I do some leading of this discussion, or anybody else like to speak? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to give you an example. There's a famous, in Stanford University, a famous test that was done, kind of like an experiment. It's called the marshmallow experiment. Anybody ever heard of the marshmallow experiment? Okay. You're gonna pick this up right away. Marshmallow experiment goes like this. I'm gonna actually realize, I'm gonna tell you something that happened in our community that's similar to this and even more deep. But the Stanford experiment was a professor did the following study. He had school children, all the same age, different demographics, and he offered them a marshmallow. Now, Or if they waited 15 minutes, they could get 2 marshmallows. Is that a fair study? What do you think the kids did? Now? Okay. So there was actually 2 groups of kids. And they studied this over time. And what came to is those who were able to hold themselves back for those 15 minutes, because they had some self-control in order to get a greater gain, did much better in all areas of life, whether it was schooling, relationships, because they had some level of self-control. And their mind was working. So even though this was young children, this was a way to see, engage, and not, there was exceptions, but by and far and large, children were able to wait those 15 minutes and have some self-control, were able to do better. So this is referring to our first text, 9a, which was, it's really for us. God doesn't need all these details. It's to make us better people, to become us more refined. And you can eat anything and everything. So the way you make choices about food is different. But if you have, let's say, a kosher diet, tells you what you should and what you shouldn't. It takes self-control. It gives you some discipline. That's just one example. I'm going to tell you another story that happened in our community. You ready for this? There was a boy who turned bar mitzvah. And now some of you, well, I'm not going to say who the boy is, but some of you actually met him before here at our shul, and we have services. Anyhow, there was a guest at his bar mitzvah. It's very customary that people give gifts to a bar mitzvah boy, and it's sometimes a Jewish book, sometimes it's a Hanukkah menorah, different things, and sometimes it's hard cash. So you have your savings. The boy puts away some money, and you can use it. So this individual that came to the bar mitzvah was not Jewish, but he was a family friend, and we were very impressed with this. He said to the boy, "Even deeper than the marshmallows." Who's ready for deeper than the marshmallows? Okay. He said to the boy, "I can give you $100, not only now, but for yourself. Or if you choose to give it to charity, I will give you $200. So to give to not for yourself, you'll be able to give $200 to charities of your choice. You can select anything that you think is an important cause." Brilliant, brilliant. So instead of giving the guy just $100, he actually made the boy think about what's important. Obviously, if he has $100, he can buy another thing with it, or he can even save it. Maybe he's very, conscientious, and he could save it for another time. But the boy, what was the choice the boy made? What do you think? 13 years old, bar mitzvah. But I would think he also would have taken the $100. Believe it or not, he decided to give it to charity, and he got.
He's just bar mitzvahed. Think of all the
Good.
time that he's been waiting. Come on. Of course he took the 200. There's no second thought about it.
All right, thank you. We were all very impressed. We were all very impressed, but it's a special story. Bottom line is that mitzvahs start getting you to work on yourself. So it's not for God, it's for us. I'll give you another interesting example. Today, this is another interesting example. There was a rabbi who was fielding very tough questions. And a person that was going through a lot of his life wrote the rabbi a really long email with lots of elements to it, and was going through a lot. And one of the elements he was discussing was, like, does God really care about the details? He was asking this question just in a very long form with lots of examples and his own life. So he wrote the rabbi a bunch of questions. This was like a series of emails he had with this rabbi. Eventually, he sends off the email. He had been corresponding with the rabbi every week, and he sent the email. The next day, he got an answer from the rabbi. He writes this long email about this very question, right? Our question. So many do's and don'ts. All the details. Who cares? So he's waiting and waiting. The whole week goes by. He used to get the following week, he would get a response. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by. He finally meets up with the rabbi and he says, "Well, it's like too difficult a question for you to discuss with me?" He starts telling the rabbi. The rabbi says, I sent you an email. He said, "No, you didn't. I didn't get any email." Long story short, is the rabbi said, "Oh, let's see how I spelled it." Right? And the whole email's exact address was correct, besides the dot. the little dots. So look at all the letters right. Who cares if I write a dot or not a dot? Well, if you don't get a dot, the system doesn't take it. He taught the boy that, we don't always understand all of life. And we're not meant to understand all of it. We're meant to do the best we can with our knowledge and study more and gain more and be better to others and to the world and do more mitzvahs. But there are certain systems which we may not fully fathom. But yes, the dot, anybody knows, if you write an email, you don't write .com, you write, Mitchell, Cohen, com without a dot. Or, this Mr. Cohen at Gmail without the dot. You just write gmail.com. Okay, well, you can say you got the main thing, but the system doesn't compute. It doesn't get it. It doesn't go through. So sometimes when we consider small little details, today's science, technology knows that the most minute details can make the biggest differences in the most greatest ways. That's in this physical world, certainly in terms of the systems of heaven. So we did a very good job today. There's obviously more to our discussion, but next week we're going to start with our next question, which is on page 63. Why do Jews sway when they pray? Have you ever seen a rabbi swaying when they pray? I'm swaying right now, if you're looking at the camera. Or when they study Torah. There's a lot of swaying going on. Anybody know the Yiddish word for swaying? Shuckling. You heard that word, shuckling? They're going like this, and they're davening, they're shuckling back and forth, swaying. It's going to be an interesting discussion. Hope you enjoyed tonight. Anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask. Let's get through our last few slides here. So here we are up. Why are there so many do's and don'ts in Judaism? So we didn't explain all of them so at length. I think we focused most on the first. Really, each of these are amazing ideas which we could talk about, but we focused mostly on the first. So number one is refine the one who performs them. The details are not for God, they're for us. That's how we connect. That's how we refine ourselves from the details. Here you have some guy refining some type of ring here. I don't know. There's some torch. Silver, I guess, something going on like that. Okay. Intimately connect us with God. It's like a spouse relationship. It's not so important what the details are. It's important that the spouse wants them or the friend. So in a relationship, like I mentioned this before, is that, let's say a husband and a wife, doing what they both like doing together is not where they show they're married. That's when they're buddies, friends. But when they do something that one doesn't really have any interest in, but if they're doing it because the other person wants it, that's what really makes a difference. This is about our marriage with God. So this is a phenomenal concept that we Jews believe that there's marriage between mankind, the people, and God. Many religions also have similar concepts as Judaism, as children of God, as servants of God, or king and servant, or teacher and student. But marriage is a partnership, and God wants us to be in that partnership. And therefore, it's not really important what it is that you're doing, or that this is what the other person wants. So you may not fully understand the do's and don'ts of all of it, but it's part of a relationship with God. This discussion should be, I feel bad being so abrupt about it, because there's a lot more to talk about this, but in general, you're getting at least the kernel of the idea. And finally, our third subject, which is making a home for God in the physical world. If there wasn't the details of Judaism, so much of the physical world would be divorced from God. Tying your shoes, that's got nothing to do with God. Eating supper, that's got nothing to do with God. Just eating supper. No, that doesn't do with God. Every detail of the world and of our life experience is infused with holiness. God made all these elements of it so we can infuse holiness, spirituality, and make the world the lowest of the worlds, as we read, a dwelling place for him and where he can be felt. So we're obviously refining oneself. You see, sometimes we can be quite, what's a good term for the fellow on the phone here? Angry? Any other words? Come on. Obnoxious? I don't know. Okay, so personal growth is most relevant in the mundane orbit. Divine connection, a true relationship is all encompassing. And then the mitzvah pertaining to the mundane areas of life create the most powerful home for God. And as I said before, our next question next week will be, why do so many Jews sway when they pray? My dear friends, wonderful night. Thank you for joining. If anyone has any comments or questions, I'd love to take them. We are going to have in person next week. Please, if you come, it's the last time we're going to be getting together for the new year in this class format. And we will let you know when we continue. There'll definitely be continuation later on in the year of this. These were great questions. We discussed today about the Jewish star. I think, was that a highlight for everybody? For me, it was a highlight. Then mikvah. And then our third question, which we discussed, was do's and don'ts. Why so many details? Okay. That one we didn't give enough time to be honest, but we did our best for the time that we allotted to it. We definitely said on the kernels, and there's always extra reading you can do in the back of your book. You have always additional readings which you can review. So wishing you a wonderful night. And next week, we hope to see you if you're able to in person. If not, that's fine as well. But we love to see those who are able to. We'll have dinner together. It's a special night. It's the 18th of El. 18 is a Jewish number. I'm sure there's going to be a question, why is 18 a Jewish number? And it's the 18th of El, which is literally the Chai, the life of the month of El, which precedes the high holidays. So hope to see you also in the high holiday season. We have a lot of fun then. A lot of wonderful experiences to be had. Wishing you a wonderful night, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which is the favorite topic tonight? That's my question.